Welcome to the Driven Moms Answering Adversity interview series, stories of success through setbacks from Mom Elevated. Together, we can shine a light on how normal challenges and struggles are, along with how we can overcome and rise above them. And today I forgot to ask Brianna, is that right?
Brianna.
Brianna, I knew it was going to be one of the two,
That's okay.
to share her story with us today, and I'm so excited. So if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about your story to get us started, go right ahead.
Sure. So I am a photographer. I run a photography studio in Orange County, California. I started out as primarily a wedding photographer back in the day and have since as I became a mom and the seasons of my life changed, so did my business. I say seasons of my life, but also COVID was a big was a big moment of shifting because weddings got shut down. So that was kind of this like catalyst for me to move my business into the place that it is now, which was something I had wanted to do but didn't know how to do. And it was kind of one of those push comes to shove moments. But um yeah, so I studied photography in college. I have always had a creative itch. And growing up, I knew I was going to get into something creative. I knew I wasn't the person that could be a 9 to 5er. I knew that I didn't think I ever would run my own business. I'll be honest. I really didn't think I'd ever run my own business. Early in my career, I somehow landed into a business partnership in a photography company. And um, I started out as an employee and then became a partner, and it kind of crashed and burned. It did not end well, unfortunately, but it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me because it was sort of this a lot very similar to what happened during COVID. It was this like rock bottom moment where I was like, okay, these are the things I don't want in my business. I want to be able to control the way that I'm perceived, the way that my business is perceived, the messaging that goes out, and the relationships that I build. And I was in this partnership that was not allowing me to have a voice. So when I left that, it was like, okay, well, wake up, Brianna. If you want all of these things, then you have to do it yourself. So that was my first rock bottom moment where I decided to just go for it and start my own business. And that was about 9 years ago. And here I am. I have a team of 13 people that work for me,
Oh my gosh.
10 photographers and 3 dedicated office staff that help me run the ship. We photograph over 100 weddings a year, countless families and brands. I couldn't even tell you the number on those. I haven't tracked them as closely. And I'm a mom of two little girls that are ages 5 and 2.
That is so amazing. What is the name of your business, your company?
Shy Heart Studios is the name of my business, and it was named after my dog.
Oh, no way. That's so cute.
My first baby, her name was
That's
Shiloh, and I named my business after her so that I could immortalize her forever.
that's beautiful. That's so sweet. I love that so much.
Thank you.
I think that's amazing, and I think it's great that you mentioned that they were, like, rock bottom, sink or swim moments that really catapulted you to making the decisions. Because I feel like that's really we get really complacent
Mhm.
in whatever role we're in, and we're like, "This is fine. It's fine," until it's not. And then
Right.
that's when you're like, "Okay, I gotta decide what is going on here." Because I feel like that's really how my business came about as well. It was a lot of those moments of, "Okay, what are we doing? Are we gonna continue on this road, or are we gonna make some changes? What changes are you gonna make?" What do you think was the hardest decision to make in that moment when you were like, "Okay, it's sink or swim. Do I just go find, some company to work for now, or do I make this happen?"
So at the time, we ended up having to settle with an attorney. And I didn't own any of the work that I photographed prior to. It was all owned by that studio. So I had no portfolio and at first no clients. So literally ground zero. And I was like, I called my mom and I was like, I'm going to have to get a real job. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And she goes, don't you dare. I was like, well, how do I do this? She's like, I don't know, but I know that you will. And I was like, okay, well, thanks for the encouragement, but that's not that helpful. Ultimately, in the dissolution of that partnership, I did get granted a handful of weddings and clients to make it fair, to float me through the end of that year. So this happened in, I think, March, April of that year, and I had enough weddings to get me through December. And so I was like, okay, I've got, 8 months And if in 8 months I have not made a name for myself, made enough connections to keep the business going, then then I've got to start over. And I did. I just, everywhere I went, I handed out my business card at the time before digital business cards, right? And I made friends that like I would go to the florist and be like, let me send you images, and immediately turn around and make sure that the florist got images within 5 days of the wedding. And I was blowing people's minds because they weren't used to that kind of, um, they would call it efficiency. I would call it desperation because I was like, I got to make friends. I got to make friends. I got to keep everybody happy so that they want to refer me and they want to work with me again. And it worked. It worked really well. And by the end of that year, so with my business partner, we had one venue that referred us to their clients, and unfortunately she got us fired from that vendor list, like removed from it. So that relationship was soured, but it wasn't soured because of me. So I reached out and I was like, hey, just so you know, we're not partners anymore. Like, I would love to be considered. I know you've got somebody in our place now, but if you need me, I'm here. And the GM of that property called me in and was like, I just want you to know that like it had nothing to do with you. We loved you and we'll keep you on as backup. So that helped. And then somebody left that venue and went to another venue and brought my name over there. And by the end of that year, it's a chain of properties. Three of those properties brought us on as the preferred vendor. And today we have five.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So that relationship, like just me not being afraid to be like, hey,
Yeah.
hi, I'm
Well,
here,
it can be so scary to be like, I
Yeah.
don't know, are they associating me with what happened,
Right.
or is this gonna be blowing up in my face? Or yeah, so
Yeah. I just had nothing to lose at that point,
yeah, right?
you know? Like, what can it hurt?
I love that. That is my favorite mentality to have, is to like, because I don't remember what the exact quote is, but I heard something from one of my clients who said, if you don't put yourself out there, you're saying no to yourself before you even allow anybody else to. Like, why reject
Yes.
yourself?
Hmm.
Y- that's shooting yourself in the foot right there. So what's the
Yeah,
point? Like, you might as well give it a shot and see what happens.
absolutely.
So I think that's great. Do you think that's the biggest adversity then that you've answered along the way? Or do you think like, because you mentioned that at COVID there was another turning point of making sure that you did something with your business that you had in mind but
Yeah.
didn't have the
Yeah, I would say that both of those were probably two of the biggest things I faced. And being 9 years removed from one of those and only three-ish, three-ish, 4 years removed from the other one, it's hard to remember. I remember how challenging and scary it felt to start from zero. And during COVID, I think I always knew we would come out of it.
Yeah.
Um, but and, of course, the beginning of the shutdown, I was like, it'll be 2 weeks. It'll be 3 weeks. We'll be back in business by June. And then all of a sudden it's January of 2021. And I was like, what am I going to do? Like, I still believed it was going to come back. I knew it wasn't forever, but I had so many. Now, here's another like fact about me. Part of the reason I always wanted to have a career that I loved was because I didn't want to ever stay in a marriage because I had to.
Mm,
So it was always really important to me. And I think probably because I come from a long line of women who were breadwinners in their family. My mom, all of her sisters, my mom's one of nine, six of them are girls.
wow.
Every single one of those women were the breadwinners in their family. And they didn't, they didn't all do things that are like mind blowing. They just hustled. They just
Yeah.
had that mindset. And it wasn't even like it wasn't even instilled in me. It was just kind of ingrained, like subconsciously ingrained in me. Um, so I knew that that was something that I always wanted. So going through COVID and having to heavily rely on my husband financially, I thank God for that. Like I was able to keep my doors open because I had a husband that his business was doing great during COVID and mine was in the toilet. But I was able to take the unemployment and use the unemployment to keep my doors open because I didn't have to use it to pay my bills. I mean, so I'm very, very grateful. But there was still this psychological thing I had to overcome of what felt like failure. I felt like I was losing everything I had built. And so there were lots of tears and lots of, I'm losing everything I built, and lots of moments of what am I going to do next? And then in January of 21, I woke up at like 4 in the morning with my wheels spinning. And I was like, how do I pandemic proof my business? Like, how do I make sure I don't get caught like this again? The and I was like, okay, I need to get back onto this podcast that's a photography podcast that I used to listen to. And I need to start coming up with these ideas. And I need to start like blogging more. And I just like, I literally got out of bed and started taking notes that night or that morning and made my coffee. And I got into the podcast. I ended up finding a coach that was a mindset coach. She was a photography business coach who focused heavily on mindset.
Wow.
And beating myself up for that year, I was like, that's the coach I need. It's somebody who's going to help me reframe my thoughts around this and change what I think about doing in-person sales, selling, artwork, wall art, albums, and things like that. And so through him and through that education, I pivoted. I didn't leave weddings, like we still were doing weddings, but I enhanced my family portrait experience. Prior to this, I was doing, mini sessions at the end of the year where I was doing 20-minute sessions, $200. Here's some digital files. And I was doing it to keep past clients happy that were coming back, but I wasn't doing it well. And the pictures were fine, but
Yeah.
my heart wasn't in it. I was doing it to make people happy. Um, and then he got me into the mindset of creating a full service experience where I plan the session out with my families. I learn about the kids. I learn about the different personalities. If there's a learning disorder or disability or anything like that that I need to know so that I know how to work with your kid, I want to know that stuff. I want to know the relationship between your two sons and how that dynamic works so that when I'm working with you, I can prompt them or I can, or if they're not real cozy and they don't get along real well, I'm not going to make them like snuggle up. I want them to be who they are. And
Right.
I start with a planning session where I learn all about the family. We plan out outfits, we pick the location, et cetera, et cetera. Then the day of the shoot, we have our session, and then they come back to my studio for a full reveal of their images and to purchase artwork. So it is a full service, well-rounded experience. It is so different than, okay, your time slot is
Yeah.
1:20 p.m. Don't be late because I've got somebody right after you, and
Right.
we're gonna power through this. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times I couldn't get through you can't get through to kids in 20 minutes. You just can't. They are not comfortable. I used to think that that was a good and easy way to get family sessions in for little kids. It's the worst way. It's the
Yeah.
literal worst way. Kids need time. And so when we do a full session, I get to play. I bust out the bubbles and like
Oh,
we
that's amazing.
play Red Rover with little kids, or we just take a stroll with the teenagers and we chat about school. And, I get them to warm up to me so that I'm capturing authenticity instead of a posed curated session. Of course, it's curated to some level, but it's really a lot more about the family. And so to just circle it all back together, that was that next pivot for me. And that was what took my business now to the level that it is, which is even more all inclusive and full service than it ever was before.
I think that's really amazing. That's a really great way to look at it too. And then you have some idea of their personalities
Hmm.
and really play on that, and you've gained their trust, so they are already
Exactly.
gonna be able to loosen up a little and be more
Hmm.
playful or be more themselves, which that's incredible. I think we usually take our own, like, photographs for Christmas cards and stuff every year. That's my yearly family photo, and
Hmm.
I can't even imagine how much better it would be if we actually took the because it's usually very rushed. It's like, "Okay, we've got an hour to get this done," and the best photos are usually the ones that we take of just them as they're just walking around and playing
Yeah.
because they're not panicked about it. They're not worried about getting the perfect shot, or you're not going, "Please smile. Please do this."
Yes. Yes, or bribing them. If you don't do this,
Yeah,
then you're not gonna get chocolate, et cetera, et
yeah.
cetera.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly.
And,
That's
that
really
works, that has its place sometimes, I'm not opposed to bribery with kids, but it's more like, "Ooh, but if you run really quickly, then I'll give you this little Smartie," or whatever, and I always,
yeah.
of course, like, you have to work with what you've got, but it does take the pressure off the parents that is n that's really there during a mini session or those self shoots because you don't know what you're doing, and the photographer doesn't have time to work with you, so it eliminates that pressure on the parents. Like I tell my parents, I want you to prep your kids for fun. Don't prep them for a photo shoot. Don't tell them that they have to smile pretty and that they have to, be on their best behavior because they don't. They
Right.
don't have to be on their best behavior. The more wild they get, the more fun my pictures are. So let them be themselves.
That's amazing. Well, and that's probably the magic of the moment is you'll get those and you get to see you really capture who, in essence, all of them are, and that's really
Yeah,
the purpose of photography anyway, so I
right.
feel like that's incredible. Oh, I love that. I might have to go just look through your portfolio to see all of
Yeah,
those
please
photos.
do.
I love that. What do you think it is then about entrepreneurs that makes us continue on through challenges, through COVID, through all of those things, so through a dissolution of a partnership that makes us keep going when times are tough, that makes us say, you know what, this is going to be worth it in the end. We are going to have a thriving business. I get to make it look like what I want it to look like.
Well, I can't speak for everybody, but I know that for me, it's my kids. It's my kids. At the end of the day, I want to create a beautiful childhood for them. And everything I do is for them. So even my pricing and the way that I've changed my pricing, I was so afraid of that when I was younger and in my early days. And now I'm like, listen, if you're taking me away from my babies at dinner time, it better be worth it.
Yeah.
Like their time, you're not just taking my time, you're taking my children's time. And if I have to leave them for this, it has to be financially rewarding for me. As much as I love what I do, yes, I want to go out and play with your kids and take pictures, but I need to be able to bring something home for my family
Yeah.
and showing them too that they can have whatever they want, and that they can overcome adversity or challenges, et cetera. If they watch me stumble and stay down, then what does that teach them?
Oh,
Right?
yes, that's so powerful. What and being able to see you create something for yourself that you're also then contributing to them. Like they get to see that and say, "Oh, I can do pretty much whatever I'd like to do if I can formulate it in a way that is going to make sense." I also think it's really important to note that you said, making it worth your time, worth their time for you to
Mhm.
be away. There's always gonna be the clients that will pay that. You just have to be able to show them why it's worth that, because I have
Right.
people who start out, that are like, "I wanna charge this." I'm like, "Great. How are you gonna show them that it's worth that?" Because
Yes.
that's really the importance, like, I feel like it's really great, like, when I started out, I charged piddly bits as well, and part of that is to get the experience and the confidence to be able to tell people what
Mhm.
you are bringing to the table and why it's worth that amount. Like, you
Yes.
have that experience, so you can say, "This is why. This is so
Well,
different."
yeah. Yeah, and especially, I mean, there's photographer down the street that might charge a fraction of what I charge,
Yeah.
and so why should they not go to them? Well, it kinda just depends on what you want out of your session, right? Do you want a full experience or do you want a shoot to burn, quick and easy session? I am not for everybody, and I understand that, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And I think that also, in addition to being able to express and explain what you do and why it's valuable, there's a certain level, there's a certain level at which I feel like, just in my own experience with what I do, I can't convince you of my worth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You either see it or you don't. Like, yes, I can tell you why I'm different than the girl down the street. I can tell you that the girl down the street is not going to plan your full session with you. She's going to give you a quick 20 minute. I can explain all that. But if you don't see the value in the experience that I provide, if it doesn't make sense to you, then it doesn't make sense to you. And
Yeah.
guess what? That is okay because then I'll stay home with my babies.
Yes.
And I'll leave room for the next client that's ready to come in that does see the value, that does want to invest in those memories for their kids in the way that I do it. And also there's a difference in, even if she does do the exact same thing that I do. Let's say she does provide the artwork and the full experience. She still is going to do it differently than I do. So
Yep.
then it comes down to our personalities and the way that we mesh and in the way that we, interact, which is why I think it's so important to either do face-to-face calls or in-person appointments. I do try to get all my clients to come in and sit with me and talk to me and get to know me in person, because that's really important too.
Yeah. I agree. I think that's beautiful. Very nice. Yes, I agree. I think that's really important to note as well. Thank you for that. Because it's a nuanced experience, and it's really based on the person that's coming to you. I even
Right.
there's clients that I will say, "I might not be your best fit, but I do know someone who might be better." Um,
Yeah.
so it's also important to, like, have that Rolodex so that you can
Right.
say, "Hey, I'm not for you, but Brianna, well, yeah, you should go."
Right. Yeah,
So,
and I'm all about no pressure. If it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for me,
yeah.
you
Ah,
know?
that's amazing. That's a really great takeaway. With that then, what is your overall takeaway or lesson that you think other mompreneurs would be able to use from your experience specifically?
I would say understanding your own value is key. And when we're charging for our time, we have to remember that we're charging for our time, but we're also charging for our children's time. And that is so important. And I wish more, we get so afraid. That's what makes me brave. When I'm about to make a change in pricing, or, I literally just cranked up all of our wedding pricing because I decided I don't want our team to shoot 100 weddings next year. It's too much.
Yeah.
I would rather level up our pricing, bring our client numbers down, still make the same profit. And I just, all of a sudden, I'm not afraid. Why am I not afraid? Because I've got babies to answer to. And it's just the stress is not worth it. So when you're pricing yourself and when you're, um, and when you're feeling that anxiety, because it's so hard to put a price on things that we create.
Yeah.
Um, it's we I feel like by default we undervalue ourselves.
Yeah.
And so for me, the best trick is to look at my kids. Because if I look at my kids and I think about what I'm taking away from them when I go out to work, it is a lot easier to set my pricing and to stick to it and to not offer the discounts that people are asking for or whatever, or not let them make me feel bad. I don't have to feel bad that this is where I've set my prices because it needs to be worth my time and theirs.
That's so powerful. And if you're reducing from 100 down to, imagine the experience that those people that actually invest in that are going to get from that.
Exactly.
So, like,
Mhm.
it does snowball. It's really hard, like you said, it's really hard to not do that because we are service providers. We do want to help. We do want to do all the things. But you can't. You get to a point where you're like, I can no longer just work from sun up to sundown. That's
Right.
not feasible anymore. And so it's okay to let that shift, to let that change, and to value your time and your family's time. I think that's fantastic. What then is the best way for others to find you if they want to work with you, learn more about you, just be in your space, see all
Sure.
your beautiful photos?
Well, Instagram is the place that we are most active. So we are at Shy Heart Studios. And then I also have just launched this year my education platform for photographers. So you can follow me at Brianna_Shrader on Instagram as well. Or of course our website, shyheartstudios.com.
Fantastic. I will have it in the description below as well, but just in
Great.
case they're just listening, they can still find you. Thank you so much for joining us today. It has been quite a pleasure. I love diving into your guys' stories and learning not only about you, but like what makes your business what it is, why you do what you do, and I think that's amazing. And thank you for sharing.
Thank you for having me. This was so fun. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it has been really fun. Your story is inspirational, and your willingness to be open about it is very much appreciated and needed in this space. That's the whole point of what we're doing. So, for those of you out there facing your own adversity, know that you're not alone. That's why we are sharing our stories. That's why you have this to tap into. When you need an extra hand or mind for brainstorming during your mompreneur journey, we would love to work with you as well through the Mom Elevated Society, which now includes the Gift Yourself Grace program. Super excited about that and offering it as a group. You'll find monthly check ins for goal setting and assessing, and so much more for both your mom and your business life. And until next time, keep shooting for the stars.